coming at you live from the insomnia room. I couldn't sleep, so I decided that instead of spiraling out of control, I would just talk about some things that, I've been thinking a lot about recently. So I decided to go back to school at 31. And we'll get to why, but before that, I kind of want to go over all the different things that I've wanted to do in my life. And the first time I ever thought about what I wanted to do was after a career day where I got asked to dress up as a mailman. Funnily enough, like 90% of my family is in the post office field, or has been at some point. But I never, it's not, that wasn't for me. So when somebody really asked me, I mentioned that I was torn between being an astronaut, which, I think falls under a similar kind of vein of policeman, fireman, astronaut, lawyer, or um, I was fascinated by history, so an archaeologist. I hadn't seen like um, Indiana Jones or anything like that, but I, you know, I was gripped by the History Channel and all the shows on ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, Greece, and the Minoans. And by the way, I'm going to be speaking a little bit lower than usual, but it is 4:47 a.m. But yeah, those were my first two kind of like, oh my god, when I grow up, I'm gonna be this, that, or the other. For a short period of time, I wanted to be an artist or a mangaka because I learned that I could sketch pretty decently. Um, I could draw Goku and Vegeta and whatever, and when my friends would see it at the elementary school, they would be like, "Oh my god, like that's so awesome!" um, but then I kind of thought about it, and I was like, "Well, I'm not Japanese, so I'm not gonna be a mangaka." Of course, this was like early days of the internet, so I didn't really have access to the knowledge then of like, oh, if I work really, really hard enough, I can be Japanese. But whatever. Um, I think a couple years after that, I found my real interest, and it all stemmed from one documentary about the SR-71. I think I think the SR-71 is a magnificent piece of machinery. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's converted more people to engineering and aerospace and just STEM in general than anything else. Honestly, it's one 10 out of 10 would recommend. But this is what kind of caused me to like really pivot in that direction early on. I think it was sixth or seventh grade, um, to the point where my only friend at that time was a Cuban kid who had come over from Cuba to Puerto Rico, and he was a little bit older, but he had to repeat a couple grades. But he and I would just talk all day in school about engineering and aerospace and just flight mechanics. And I mean, about as deeply as two seventh graders could. But it really kind of got me. And then if we were to fast forward a couple years after that, um, was it 2008? I think I must have been like in ninth grade or something that Iron Man 1 came out and it was solidified. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna, I'm actually I'm gonna be an engineer. um, and for the longest time after that, so from like, let's say ninth grade onward, it's all I thought I would do, and not just like, for example, not just work at Lockheed Martin and um, be an engineer there, but my fantasy and I discovered that I had an unquenchable ambition, and the whole fantasy was that I'm gonna be one of the most influential engineers of our time at by 30. And I had a little roadmap and whatever. But obviously, time passes by and it is 12th grade, and I'm I'm taking my tests for university, and I see that I'm not doing really good. I mean, I did above average, but not in a competitive way. I don't know if that makes sense, but whatever. We're sticking to that. I didn't really get to the university I wanted to go to. I got to the second best, but um, it was one where it had a transfer program to the university I wanted to go, not one that had the actual um, program, which was engineering and what's it called? It was engineering at the UPR of Mayagüez, the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. And I ended up getting accepted to the UPR Rio Piedras, which they're controversial. I loved it. I loved my time on campus and whatever, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Since I didn't score well enough, the only program I could get into that was related was computer science, which, looking back now, I kind of regret not sticking with. But this is where I reached my first major obstacle, and that was I'm not good at math. um, I I could learn the theory, I could explain it, and I could dive deep into like why it works, I guess, and I could perform in the classroom. But when it came down to testing, no, I would fail miserably, like to the point where we would hold study sessions and I could help people kind of wrap their heads around it. But I don't know, something about translating like the knowledge into like the formulations, and it would get lost in translation. So I don't know. From then, I moved on to a bunch of different like I give up because everything came easy to me early on, and when things wouldn't flow, I just was like, fuck it, time to pivot. But from then I pivoted to biology, interdisciplinary sciences. I think there was even a bit of law school in there. Like I would just bounce around from place to place and whatever, and ultimately it just nothing really panned out to the point where I even joined the military for a short stint, a short stint, and then went back to school because I thought it was time. And I did engineering. Like, so with the military, I went back to school for engineering, and I thought like, oh, this time's gonna be different and whatever, and it was not. I was just absolutely. This time it was actually I was just terrible. Like, it just between the responsibilities and whatever, it just I couldn't give it the bandwidth that it deserved, and ultimately I ended up picking up a bachelor's in interior design, with a focus like a large focus on architecture, which was really cool. I enjoy the creative process. I found out I have a really good brain for design, but at the same time, it was like, how can I take this and pivot into what I really wanted to do, which was engineering? And at the time, like, I don't know if this makes sense. Like, it was still what I wanted to do. Um, I then met a professor who kind of taught me about how to apply design thinking into a more broader kind of field, which was product design. And like that to me also sounded very interesting because it was like, oh, um, if I can't do what I want to do directly, I can pivot to an adjacent field and then still be a part of the process. But Puerto Rico didn't really have any like when I got my bachelor's after that, and one, we didn't have a really good program of product design that I could pivot into, and two, the interior design field is a luxury field in Puerto Rico, which it's one of those things where if you don't really have any real connections, you're kind of stuck. But nothing. Pandemic happened. uh, Moved from Puerto Rico to Florida. Florida, I've taken on a bunch of different jobs. Um, and I landed a really good one at a genuinely good company, uh, where I feel like stabilized enough to just enjoy life. Like I could make a genuine career here, and I'll be good. But here, but here's where the ambition kind of strikes again. I have a really I have a really strong friend group here. They're wonderful people, and honestly, like I wish I could hang out with them more because we live like a little bit further north, while they're down like about an hour away, so we can't like always overlap. But we've been showing up more, especially now that we have that I have this job. My fiance, also has a really good job now. Um, but the reason why I bring up the friends is because they are all go-getters, if that makes sense. Um, Funnily enough, they are all engineers, or the vast majority of them, or if they're not, they're still people who follow their passions like deeply. And that's been honestly genuinely motivating to see people who, despite their kind of ups and downs and whatever, like they're still moving forward with all the things that they want to do. And I saw myself initially getting a little bit jealous, like in the toxic sense of like, oh, it should have been me. And then I was like, wait a minute, you kind of dumbass. um, it's like it's not about it should have been you. It's like they are living their lives. They are going through their own adventures, and it's up to you to do your, it's up to you to walk your path and have your adventure. So now that I'm in a bit of a more comfortable place, I I decided to take a hard look at myself and really kind of get things together and define, like, hey, you know, if you want to stay at your job and have a traditional career, that is 100% fine. If you want to go back to school and see and pivot into a different industry, that's also fine. And I really thought about it for a little bit, and I decided to give it a shot and try to go for that engineer slash STEM industry. So um, I started last month, and I already passed my first tests. now now the next one's actually math. So oh my god. But so now I just started my program for cloud computing, and honestly, it's been a lot of fun. I finished my first course yesterday. Now I'm moving on to probability and statistics, which it's math based. So oh my god, pray for me. But I'm really enjoying it, and more than that, I think the difference this time around is that I'm actually kind of getting my hands dirty with technology. With I've been super obsessed with like AI, which which I know is kind of like a hot topic today, but like it's less of a I'm still less on the actual background of it, but I'm more of the uh, I'm I'm really diving into the front end and seeing like the genuine possibilities of how this could change, how this could change the world and how people can actually bring it into their lives and, you know, have it be a genuine tool of good and not just something that kind of, is detrimental and makes them lazy. For example, I've been experimenting a lot with recontextualization of topics. So, what I mean by that is, I struggled initially with the course. At 30, I haven't really had a reason to kind of keep those learning muscles fresh. So I am seeing a bit of I am seeing a little bit more friction when it comes to just like absorbing information. Like I can I can understand a lot of um, I can understand a lot of high level topics, but when it comes to like getting granular, it's been it's been really interesting to see how just things don't necessarily flow like they used to, like in high school or whatever. And I've been using GPT, the premium $20 version of 4.0, and during one of my study sessions that I saw that like it wasn't clicking. I was like, I'm studying this, but I but my background is this, and through some of our uh, okay, so GPT has memories of your conversation. It'll highlight specific things that it deems like it could be important for future use. Of course, it can backlog and see like through your chats if you ask it to, but it's going to be important now. So this first course, I saw that things weren't like necessarily flowing well, um, and what I asked it to do was I gave it a list of topics that were being discussed in class and that I was having problems with, and I asked it to recontextualize it in a way that it saw I could respond well to. So it knows I like a lot of lore, a lot of history, like a narrative. I need a narrative and a reason to kind of like, and I need a narrative and a framework to understand things. Like, um, for example, a magic system in Game of Thrones or something like that. Like, give it to me like lore. If you give it to me like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or anything like that, then I like, oh my god, it fucking clicks. It's like um, yeah, well, for example, an OS is a framework of magic. A kernel is kind of like what you know. Um, it's kind of like this invisible force that tells you what you can and can't do. A driver is just like it. It's like, hey, I'm here. It's very. It. I'm still like at the very introduction of things, but it was like a lot of these like little concepts that it just broke down, um and honestly, just the fact that it could transmute something from alien speak to to just lore and history and all that good stuff just kind of really opened my eyes. Like this is a tool that can build a future, and not just at a macro level, but at an individual level. Like if you learn how to use this, honestly, you can be unstoppable. um, and more than anything else, it's also reinvigorated why I wanted to go back to school. Like maybe I won't be an like an Iron Man in the sense of like building armors or flying around or whatever. But I can still, in this technological world, I can still learn and pick up things that, and pick up things that I'm curious about, and at the end of the day, it's less about doing things the way you thought you would do them, but doing things in the way you can do them, and understanding that you can pivot, but you have to stick with it. And I think that's been a lesson that's been hard learned, but we all get there at some point. But in short, I know this has been a bit of a rant. I'm very excited to be back in a learning environment. I'm very excited to see what the future holds when it comes to all that stuff. And honestly, like I'm gonna keep playing around with ChatGPT and just seeing how I can use it outside of my courses and more of like I guess practical applications, because I know I might need a portfolio since I'm a little bit later in the game. I don't have anything to show like apps or anything like that. I can do like the creative stuff. So I want to see how using the skills I have already and a bit of guidance from GPT and whatever I learned from school to see how I can actually apply it, build a couple passion projects, and then get out in the field. You know, um, yeah. Let me know if you guys are going through something similar, maybe transitioning into something different, whether it's at work or life or school or anything like that. And yeah, it's let me know down below, and we can help each other out and keep each other motivated. Yeah, thank you.